Not at first, I said. Then it will. The internet burns, hot and short. Courts burn slow and bright. At 4:02 p.m., my mother decided to escalate without touching a phone. She had the head of obstetrics at a partner hospital call my coup, who then called me. Layered chain, plausible deniability. Alexander, I received an inquiry from Hillickson Health regarding maternal risk management, the doctor said, voice honeyed with prestige. They indicated a preference for termination given your public role. I find that inappropriate. I assume you do too. Inappropriate isn't a big enough word, I said. I appreciate the professional heads up. Consider Helixson Health's preference, rejected in every tense. I hung up and called Eleanor. She picked up on the first ring. Using hospital proxies now, I asked. I'm reminding you that you're a public executive, she said. Public executives keep their houses in order. My house isn't your jurisdiction. Your house is my legacy, she said. You think I built you for this? To be common. To let a girl from a walk-up decide the valuation of a company I carved out of rock. There it was. Not the fear of scandal. The contempt for ordinary. My rage, when it came, was not cinematic. It was cold. You didn't build me, I said. You built a version of me you could use. The person you built would make the transaction you just tried to arrange. I'm not him. You'll be him again when the board takes your chair, she said. Men always remember who feeds them when they get hungry. I would rather starve, I said. And for the first time in our lives, she believed me enough to hang up without a comeback at 5. We posted Emma's statement and sent the first volley of at 5. The first suit landed Dalvarez against a gossip site that had published a blurry ultrasound with our names under it, neither of which belonged to us. At 5:20, a different outlet ran a story titled, "He paid her to stay. He'll pay her to go." It did what lazy stories do, gossiped and called it analysis, at 6. Hayes knocked once and opened the door wide enough to announce another guest. Vivian stepped in, still in a blazer, hair pulled back, eyes doing math. I told the board to give you 48 hours, she said by way of hello. I can't promise you more, but I can box them in if you don't hand them a weapon. What counts as a weapon? I asked. A grand gesture, she said. Anything with flowers. Anything at a gala with a microphone. Anything your mother can clip and send to the street with the subject line, "He's lost objectivity." Emma and I both looked at the carpet. We had talked about the gala, I said. Don't, Vivian said. You want the market to price in stability, not romance. She wants the board to price in obedience, Emma said, too tired to be diplomatic. Vivian surprised me by almost smiling. I want everyone in this room to survive, she said. The way you do that is dull. Give me boring, Alexander. Boring gets you through tomorrow. After that, we'll reevaluate. After Vivian left, we ate dinner out of cartons on the bed like a pair of grad students hiding from a landlord. Emma pushed noodles around her plate, then set it aside and leaned back against the headboard. Can I ask you something without it turning into strategy? She said. Yes. If the board forces you out, do you know who you are without the title? I stared at the ceiling for a beat too long. I want to say yes, I said. I can say I'll learn fast. She nodded. Good, because I know who I am without you. That's the only way this works. Who are you? I asked. A person who won't cut herself into pieces to fit someone else's frame, she said. And a person who is tired of explaining that to men in suits. Message received, I said. I'm working on it. At 9:30, Hayes slid a folder under our door. Inside, a one-page memo, an internal security brief from my office. Someone on the investor relations floor had been selling schedule scraps to a fixer who fed paparazzi. Names attached, prices, dates. Your house is leaking, Emma said. Then we fixed the roof, I said, and called HR with a list. 3 terminations, 1 referral to legal, 1 security escort off premises without a victory lap on Slack. At 10:50. I got a text from the unknown number that had promised to write me if I chose wrong. See you at the benefit, hero. Black tie looks good with blood. Hayes didn't ask permission to take the phone. He photographed the screen, moved it into evidence, then set a small, ugly device next to the nightstand. RF detector, he said. If they try to bug the room, I'd like to find out before your next shower. This is our life now, Emma asked. Not forever, Hayes said, surprising me with his tone. But for a minute, yeah. We didn't sleep. At 3 a.m., the city did the thing it does after a day like ours, pretended nothing had happened and went on powering refrigerators and charging phones and hosing down sidewalks. At 4:30, Emma's phone lit with a call from the hospital, her dad's surgeon. Cheerful in the way surgeons are when they like the numbers. Surgery went well, he said when she put him on speaker. He'll be in cardiac, I see you overnight. Everything we wanted to see, we saw. Thank you, she said. And the way she said it broke me in a place I thought steel had already filled. After the call, she put the phone down carefully and rested her head against my shoulder without looking at me. We lay like that for a long time, measuring breathing. Do you still want the gala? She said into the half-dark. Even if Vivian says we should be boring. Yes, I said. Not for the cameras. For the choice. What choice? The one where I say it in a room my mother thinks she owns, I said. In daylight, once. Then we can be boring forever. She was quiet long enough to scare me. Then, okay. If we do it with one rule. What's the rule? No speeches about destiny, she said, and there was a smile in it. You don't persuade a woman like me with poetry. You persuade me by standing somewhere hard and staying put. I can do that, I said. Then do it, she said. The benefit was 2 nights away. A black tie fundraiser for a pediatric health non-profit where half my board had tables with their names on them. I used to treat those nights like harvests. Then the relationships, go home with pileable goodwill. Now it would be a field where we drew a line. I sent 1 email before I fell asleep sitting up. The kind of message that changes weather. Subject programming change for Saturday's benefit too. Event chair, CC, Vivian Parkey, will be making brief, personal remarks at the top of the program. No questions. No press scrum. If that's a problem, I'll withdraw my table and make the donation privately. It was not, by any definition, boring. It was a promise I meant to keep. At dawn, the bay turned from slate to pewter to something like mercy. I watched it and thought about the cost of daylight. Most people think it's money. Then they think it's reputation. They're both wrong. Daylight costs nerve. You have to keep standing there when you can't see what it's going to burn away. I showered, shaved, and put on the same white shirt I'd worn for the webcast. It felt like armor from a smaller war. Emma came out of the bathroom in a robe, hair damp, eyes brighter than they had any right to be on that little sleep. Breakfast. I asked toast, she said, and a plan. Always a plan, I said, and for once it didn't feel like a lie. Black tie nights used to feel like harvest smile. Circulate, bank goodwill you can spend when the quarter turns against you. That Saturday, the benefit at San Francisco City Hall felt like a test I hadn't studied for on purpose. Hayes briefed us like we were walking into court with bad facts. Took our approach. We used the Grove Street entrance, not Polk. Secondaries on the loading dock. I've got 4 bodies inside and 2 on the mezzanine. If anything feels off, we leave without asking permission. Define off, Emma said. Straightening the simplest black dress I've ever seen make a room feel underdressed. Anything that smells like a trap, Hayes said, including speeches with surprise questions. No questions, I said. No scrum. Then we're aligned, Hayes said, and handed Emma an earpiece the size of a comma. You lose me. You tap twice on your left wrist. He waited a beat. And Ms. Collins, I don't say that enough at work. She smiled at him, small and real. Thank you, Hayes. The City Hall rotunda makes people speak softer whether they mean to or not. White stone, a staircase that believes in empires. Balconies designed for onlookers who understand the difference between watching and interfering. I've written checks under that ceiling that looked like policies when the ink dried. Tonight the ceiling looked like judgment. The event chair met us with the posture of a woman who'd balanced donors and egos for a living. We added your remarks to the top of the program, she said to me, a question folded into a statement. Brief, I said. Then I'm a guest. She took a breath like she'd been waiting to be told we'd hijack her night. Thank you. Vivian stood under the mezzanine arch, navy suit, hair in a knot that said she slept the same hours I did few. She pulled me aside while Emma checked the table assignments. You have 90 seconds, she said. Not 91. 90, I said. Stop when you've said enough, she said. Don't chase applause. Understood. She hesitated, then added, I'm on your side of the line you're about to draw. But if you burn down the building, I'll be the one writing the claims checks. Then I'll try not to light drapes, I said. Eleanor materialized the way she always does, no wasted movement. Pearls at the throat like punctuation. She looked at me and then at Emma and delivered a smile that never touched her eyes. Nice to see you obeying the dress code, she said. Shame about everything else. It's a pediatric charity, Emma said, polite as glass. They probably prefer checks to comments. Eleanor's gaze flicked to her midsection for a sinfully long beat, then back up. We'll see what they prefer by Monday. Hayes slid between us without looking like he had. Program's starting, he said, to the air dot. We took our table. The rotunda brightened. A string quartet laid polite sound over a polite conversation. On the dais, the MC did what MCs do, thanked sponsors, mentioned the honoree, teased the auction lots. Then she called my name. I'd spoken on that dais as the kind of man who smooths other men's fears with numbers. Tonight, the only number that mattered didn't belong on a slide. Thank you for letting me go first, I said, hands off the lectern. I won't be long. I looked at Emma. She didn't nod. She didn't need to. We'd already agreed on the only rule that mattered: no destiny speeches. I came tonight to support a place that takes care of small people and the big people who love them, I said. That's what this room does. That's also what my house is trying to do right now. A soft stir on the balconies. No flashbulbs yet. The press had been kept at the steps. "You've read the rumors," I said. "The true part is simple. I'm going to be a father. My company has an interim voice for investors because we planned for that. What I'm asking for here is less complicated and more difficult than capital markets protocol decency. Give my family the space any family would ask for. We'll do the rest in daylight." I stepped back. No flourish. No reach for applause. A thing said, not sold. Silence held a second longer than I expected. Then the room did the only thing it could without making itself small. It clapped. Not a roar. A human sound. I caught Emma's eye. It wasn't pride. It was relief with a spine. Eleanor's applause was precisely 3 beats long, designed to register on cameras and nowhere else. The program flowed forward. A physician told a story that made a venture capitalist and a bartender wipe their eyes at the same second. A mother described a night with monitors and a morning with a discharged nurse who remembered her kids stuffed bare by name. Money loosened in pockets like mercy people had been saving for a better excuse at our table. A board member I tolerate because he owns the exact percentage of voting stock required to require tolerating leaned in. "Brave," he said, like he was complimenting a teenager's haircut. "Not what I would have done." "That's why it was me," I said, and turned away before I said the rest. Halfway through the live auction, Hayes murmured in my ear, low enough not to spook anyone, "We've got movement on the Polk Street entrance. 3 uncredentialed with long lenses. 1 fixer we've seen before. If they get inside, they'll be looking for a scuffle." I asked, "Create one," he said. "Doesn't take much. A shove, a verbal. You turn to protect Ms. Collins. We've got our photo. Keep them outside," I said. "We're trying," he said. "Building securities under instructions from someone who outranks the event chair." I didn't have to ask who. City Hall takes calls from people who sign donor plaques. Plan B. I asked, "You and Miss Collins leave on my word and you don't look back," Hayes said. "If I say go, you go." My phone buzzed with a text from the unknown number that had been narrating our week like a third Drake. Greek chorus, brave speech. "Watch your back." I showed it to Emma under the table. She read it and slid the phone back like she was shelving a library book. "When they finally run out of threats, they'll use timing," she said. "They want you to react, not decide. What's your decision?" I asked. "Dessert," she said. "Then we leave before some man with a camera writes our ending." Desert was plated, speeches were done, and the quartet moved into the kind of music that tells donors they can go home proud. Hayes's voice came in again, barely a vibration. "Time to go. Dock doors, now." We stood. I shook the event chair's hand, thanked the MC, smiled at 3 people I didn't need to remember, and turned toward the side corridor with Emma at my shoulder and Hayes 1 pace off my right. Eleanor stepped in like a magistrate entering the courtroom late, just to make the room rise twice. "That was a very expensive 90 seconds, she said. I didn't stop. "Some prices are worth paying. They always are," she said, matching my stride without wrinkling, "until you're paying them alone." "Not alone," Emma said, and kept walking. We hit the service corridor, the part of City Hall that looks like every other building when the public paint runs out. Grey, functional, unforgiving. 2 figures peeled off the shadows near the dock doors. Cameras down at their hips, posture wrong, left, Hayes said, and we cut through a side door into a narrow passage that shouldn't exist except in buildings this old. where necessity and history create secret options. Another Hayes waited at the other end, his man on the mezzanine, opening a final door into night. The loading bay smelled like wet cardboard and freedom. A van blocked the mouth of the alley, doors open, our SUV idling behind it. Hayes moved first, hand up in a universal sign for not tonight, gentlemen. The two with cameras came fast anyway. It takes exactly 1 second for a scene like that to turn into contenter, shoulder brushed too hard, a heel caught, a frame cropped to mean the opposite of what happened. I stepped forward to split them, Hayes's palm finding my chest to stop me. "Let me earn my check," he said, and in one motion shifted his weight, turned the closest camera aside without breaking anything, and placed his body where mine had wanted to be. Emma slid by me, and I followed, one hand on the small of her back, the same way I'd placed it at the press conference last week. Context changes what a gesture means. We were 2 steps from the SUV when a voice I recognized hit the alley like a gavel. "Alexander." Eleanor didn't run. She doesn't need to. She walked into the alley with the event chair at her elbow like legitimacy on tap. "You think you've done something noble," she said. "All you've done is teach every man who thought you were a machine that you're soft." "I'm not a machine," I said. "That was the point." "The point," she said, "is that you have confused daylight with virtue. You stood on a stage, and because no one booed, you think the street will clap." "I think if they boo, we'll build anyway," I said. "And if they clap, we'll build anyway. Either way, we'll raise a child who knows I didn't sell him for a guidance bump." The word hit her like profanity, not the child. The him, a pronoun, is a declaration if you say it at the right time. "Drive," Hayes said over my shoulder, calm as weather. We got in. Doors shut. The van moved. The alley opened. Hayes took Poke to a side street, to another, to a third, until the rotunda lights were pictures in a rearview mirror. Emma sat forward, fingers locked, then turned to me with eyes that were equal parts carved and lit. "You did it," she said. "In her room." "It's not her room," I said. And only then did I believe it. "Tomorrow will be worse," she added, like a nurse adjusting a drippenist. "Necessary." "Probably," I said. "Good," she said. "Then we'll stop being brave and start being ordinary." "Ordinary?" I said, half a laugh, half a prayer. "Yes," she said. "Eggs not burned, walks without a shadow, a calendar with one word on a Tuesday that isn't a meeting. That's the point of all this, right? Not to give speeches, but to get to Tuesday." We reached the hotel without doubling a tale. Hayes did another sweep and left us with instructions about alarms I had no intention of ignoring. I ordered room service I knew we wouldn't eat. The city breathed around us like a machine we weren't obligated to feed tonight. I stood at the window. City Hall's dome glowed in the distance, beautiful, expensive, indifferent. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Nice exit. See you at earnings. I turned the phone face down and left it there. Emma came up beside me, shoulder to shoulder, not touching. The glass cooled our foreheads. "You didn't give them a speech," she said. "You stood somewhere hard and stayed put." "Rule compliance," I said. "Gold star," she said, and reached for my hand. We fell asleep with clothes still halfen. The kind of sleep your body takes when it's counted to 100 twice and still hears. Footsteps at 4:06 a.m. The fire alarm jolted the 13th floor awake. Hayes was through our door in 10 seconds, earpiece in, already moving us toward the stairs. False alarm, the desk swore, but not the kind a hotel triggers for fun. Someone had pulled a lever and run. We filed down with other guests in pajamas and gowns. Outside, the street smelled like cold diesel and the last cigarette someone was pretending to quit. 2 cameras lurked across the way, disappointed the building hadn't emptied faster. Back in, Hayes said when the all clear came. We hold here until sunlight. Then we move. Move where? I asked. Home, he said. It's harder to trap you on your own ground if you stop telling them where the ground is. Back upstairs, I lay awake and waited for morning's mercy. When it came, it looked like the ordinary Emma had promised light sneaking past blackout curtains. The sound of a cart in the hallway, a text from Alvarez that said simply, "Tro granted." We ate toast. We made a plan. It wasn't heroic. It was logistics and sentences and a day built out of small, stubborn choices. We would go back to the penthouse. We would lock it down. We would show up where we were paid to and refuse to show up. Where we weren't, we would keep the prenatal appointment under a name that belonged to no one we knew. We would be boring until boring felt like safety. At 9, Vivian called. "The board meets at 1, she said. "They'll posture. I'll manage. Don't do anything cinematic. No speeches," I said. "Now you're learning," she said, and hung up before I ruined her goodwill with gratitude. I looked at Emma. "You ready to go home?" She nodded. "Ready to go to Tuesday." We checked the hall, the elevator, the garage. We stepped into morning like 2 people who know they've chosen the expensive thing and intend to keep paying. The city didn't care. That was the gift. Street sweepers, dog walkers, kids in hoodies with Donuts Life moving at the only speed that ever wins. Hayes pulled us into traffic. The dome receded. The day opened. The machine whirred, as it always will, and in the quiet between red lights, with a human hand in mine and a heartbeat we couldn't schedule but wouldn't trade, I understood the price of daylight and why I'd pay it again. By mid-morning, the city had reset to its weekday-setting trash trucks. Horns, the steady argument of Market Street. We were back in the penthouse like we hadn't just tested the fire alarms on half of Pacific Heights overnight. Toast crumbs on a plate. Ginger steaming. Hayes at the door, pretending not to listen for problems only he could hear at 11:40. Alvarez texted. Traw entered. Any outlet that prints medical info gets sued into next quarter. Stay boring. Boring, I said to Emma, is our luxury product. Good, she said. Let's spend it. We kept the prenatal appointment under the name Alvarez had arranged. New clinic. New route, paper forms that still smelled like the box. No one looked up when we walked in. The waiting room was a democracy of nerves. Teachers, techs, a woman in scrubs who probably worked in the same building on different days. A TV in the corner ran a loop about hydration and folic acid. It felt like an unambitious miracle. The exam room was cold, the way medical rooms always are. The clinician mid-30s, sharp ponytail. Eyes that registered people before charts, introduced herself with one rule. I don't do paparazzi. I do patients. If anyone asks me for a comment, I tell them I wasn't there. Deal, Emma said. They did the basics. Pressure, blood work. The sonographer warmed the gel, angled the wand. And there it was, again soft sound from a machine that makes skeptics religious for 30 seconds. Whoosh, whoosh. No math to argue. I watched Emma, not the screen. She didn't cry. She rarely does. She breathed like someone taking a test she had already passed. On the way out, a grey-haired woman in a warrior's hoodie bumped my shoulder and apologized twice. "My fault," I said. She smiled at Emma like women sometimes do at each other in rooms where men think they're the main story. Outside, the air tasted like eucalyptus and gas at 12:55. I walked into the boardroom with my hair still damp from a shower I didn't have time to finish. Vivian sat at the head, laptop open, water bottle at 2 o'clock like a compass. 3 directors were in the room, 4 on screens. A speakerphone in the center glowed orange. Eleanor was not visible, but very much present. "We're on the record," Vivian said. "Agenda, capacity review, delegation framework, investor communications, and any motions arising. That's how boards declare war objectives that sound like housekeeping." I led with the plan we'd built in Alvarez's office. "I'll remain CEO and delegate investor-facing duties to Lauren through quarter. We hold guidance. We do not juice it. We file an 8K to memorialize the delegation so no one can call it sneaking. Internally, I'll chair ops, but step out of any discussion that touches my household. Externally, I won't become the story." "You already are the story," said a director whose fund likes to call us on Sundays. "The question is whether you have the discipline to stop making it worse." "Define worse," I said. "Anything that spikes volatility," he said. "The market mouths family values and prices risk." "Markets price uncertainty," Vivian cut in. "We reduce uncertainty with process. Not speeches. Not denials. Process." A new voice slid across the speakerphone like a ribbon under a door. "Eleanor, process requires leaders who don't confuse private appetite with public duty." Vivian didn't look at the phone. "Eleanor, this board is capable of distinguishing governance from gossip." "Gossip moves tape," Eleanor said. "Tape moves capital. Capital hires people." I moved to place Alexander on leave for 90 days and appoint Lauren interim CEO until he chooses the adult path. We slept in stitches. At 5:07 a.m., my phone buzzed one more time. Alvarez. A 2-word aria. Complaint dismissed. I let the relief out in a breath I didn't know I still had. Emma rolled toward me without waking all the way and found my hand like it belonged there, which it did by 7. The super suite felt like purgatory with better plumbing. Hayes cleared our floor and walked us back to our door. Coffee tasted like something you drink because other people do. I opened my laptop to a grid of meetings that suddenly looked like a schedule for a version of me I had resigned from being at 8:15. Vivian sent the last text of the morning. "You bought a week. Use it to normalize. Show up. Ship code. Don't feed trolls. We'll revisit Friday," I wrote back. Copy, then added, "because I wanted at least one sentence in my day that wasn't a memo. We're picking a name that doesn't perform." She replied with a dot. I chose to read as approval. I closed the laptop. Emma slid a mug across the island. We looked at each other for a long second that felt like a real-life version of a decision desk calling a race. No fanfare, no music, just numbers and then a human choosing. "Tuesday?" she said. "Tuesday," I said. We started it emails, eggs, a walk that looked like nothing special and therefore felt like a win. The machine whirred in the background. The board would meet again. The street would judge again. My mother would not learn patience at her age. But there are things the board can't vote on, that markets can't short, that mothers can't recuse themselves from. A heartbeat, a rule about decency, a name you haven't chosen yet, hovering over a life you plan to live in daylight. We did the next thing. And then the next. That's how you build a week out of pieces that could have been a disaster and decide, together, not to let it be. 3 years pass differently when you count by checkups, nap schedules, and product ship dates you no longer own. We didn't pick a name that performed. We picked one that fit on a lunchbox and a library card. Sam, 2 letters that don't ask a room for permission. He arrived in a November storm that made hospital windows hum. The doctor announced him with the calm of a person who has seen miracles become routine. I didn't crime still my mother's son that weighed, but something fundamental loosened in me, like a knot that had been useful and then outlived its purpose. Emma laughed when I tried to swaddle him like a spreadsheet tight, even corners neat. He's not a deck, Alex, she said. He's a person. I've been practicing that sentence ever since. We built a life that would bore my old bio. ReadTech survived the season where my name trended for all the wrong reasons. Lauren steered the quarter. Vivian bent time with process. The board did what boards do bot months and called it strategy. I stayed, then I left. It didn't happen in a speech. It happened in a hallway, a last signature borrowed from a hand that used to believe signatures were the point. My mother sent flowers when Sam turned 1, white lilies that smelled like money and funerals. The card read, "I hope you're pleased with the lesson you're teaching." She means well in a language no one speaks at home. I work now in a brick building with windows that stick after rain. 14 people. A healthcare software shop that does useful, unsexy things, eligibility checks that don't break, scheduling that doesn't crash a clinic on a Tuesday. We ship bug fixes the way I used to ship narratives, often quietly. Some nights I lock up and feel the old machine calling like the ocean, reliable, indifferent, so big you mistake its noise for meaning. I let the feeling stand next to me and then go home. Home is louder than any earnings call. Sam refuses vegetables with the conviction of a CEO declining an acquisition. He points at cranes and calls them dinosaurs. He drags me to the park in a hoodie that says, "Ask me later," which he can't read yet but already understands. He knows my mother as Grandma Eleanor, a title that sits on her like a borrowed coat. When she visits, she looks at him like a foreign country with a familiar coastline. She brings puzzles with too many pieces and notes about school admissions for a child who thinks stairs are mountains. Emma sets tea on the table and lets them find each other or not. Some routes don't reveal themselves on the first map. People still send me articles about other men in other cities who did or didn't choose the day in public. I skim, the details change. The argument doesn't. Markets want certainty. Families want Tuesdays. Companies want a story that can be told in one sentence. People want more sentences than that. I've learned you can't make all those wants agree. You can only decide which ones you refuse to betray. One afternoon, when Sam was down for a nap and the city was doing its lullaby of sirens and foghorns, Vivian called, "You ready to be bored again?" She asked. "I thought I was world-class at it now," I said. "Good," she said. "Because ReadTech wants you on the board, not as a mascot, as a vote. We're rewriting the ethics charter. The HALE Act has teeth, but companies still prefer gums. I need someone who can count and remember the day he chose daylight. I promised myself I wouldn't go back to the room my mother thinks she owns, I said. Then don't go back to her room, Vivian said. Bring your own chair. Or say no, but say it on purpose. After I hung up, I watched light climb the wall like it had a train to catch, and considered who I was when I first sat at that long table, and who I am now. The old me would have replied before the echo died. The current version waited for a better reason than the thrill of relevance. Emma came in with 2 mugs and looked at my face, like a mechanic diagnosing a familiar rattle. Vivian wants me on the board, I said. Do you? She asked. I don't know, I said. I know what it used to give me. I'm less sure what it would cost now. She set the mugs down and leaned hip to counter. Then don't move until the answer isn't about your mother. We took Sam to the beach at dusk, the way we do when choices feel larger than rooms. He ran at the edges of waves like he thought he could argue tide into retreat. The sky did its best impression of a decision and then got on with being sky. Emma laced her fingers through mine. You could say yes, she said, and use it, or say no and mean it. Both are adult choices. Your mother will hate either if they're yours. I said I'd live in daylight, I said. You are, she said. Daylight isn't a job. It's a posture. A gull screamed something profane. Sam screamed back in fluent toddler. I laughed and felt the decision move closer without introducing itself. Winter turned into the kind of spring San Francisco specializes in, cold with flowers. We went to pediatric appointments, to the hardware store for the wrong size of anchors, to brunch with friends who used to be colleagues and now talk about preschools like mergers. Some nights I opened the laptop after bedtime and wrote policy drafts. I didn't show anyone notes on how to measure leadership by the number of people who feel safe telling the truth to it. Other nights I left the computer cold and lay on the rug while Sam parked a fleet of trucks on my stomach. Both felt like work that counted. No, Vivian said. Out of order. If you want to introduce emotion, you do it after we've completed the review you asked for. Silence the kind that isn't quiet. I could hear the air handler take the room's temperature, the head of the audit committee, a woman who could end bar fights with a glance, cleared her throat. I'm not voting anyone out on a Saturday headline. The delegation is clean. The 8K protects us. We vote on a formal review and revisit a quarter end. Second, another director said. Vivian looked down the table at me. You accept the terms you proposed? Yes, I said. And I'll add one. Any leaks about my household from inside this company trigger immediate terminations and a report to legal. We've already lost one IR staffer to a fixer. We won't lose another. The Sunday calls director bristled. You don't run HR from the boardroom. I run my house from wherever I have to, I said, and surprised myself with how steady my voice was. Vivian called the vote. All in favor of the delegation framework and formal review. Hands in the room. Green lights on screens. Only one red, predictable as weather. Motion carries, Vivian said. We are adjourned on this item. I'd kept the chair for now. That's what boards do when they hate all their options. They buy time and hope reality picks one for them. When I stepped into the hall, my phone pulsed with alerts. Most were noise. One wasn't. A site with a knack for lawsuits had posted a headline with a grainy ultrasound that wasn't ours and a caption that used Emma's name like a slur. Alvarez texted before my blood could heat. Already filed. Traw attached. Don't look. Breathe. I put the phone in my pocket and went looking for Tuesday. At home, Hayes ran a sweep like a ritual. He added a second deadbolt and a small camera pointed at the floor outside our door. "We're not broadcasting," he said. "We're documenting." Emma sat at the counter with a yellow legal pad and a pencil like she was back in school. She'd written 3 columns: medical, legal, life. Under life she had 2 items: dad rehab plan and eggs not burned. "How'd the board do?" she asked without looking up. "They performed governance," I said. "I'm still CEO if I agree to pretend investors are my only constituency, and do you?" "No," I said, "but I'm willing to behave as if the company doesn't have to bleed for me to be human." She lifted an eyebrow. "That sounds like growth." "Don't tell my mother," I said. We called her father together. He sounded like a man who'd been taught to respect numbers, but was learning to love certain sounds more: his daughter's voice, a monitor that beeped steady and boring. When he asked how work was, Emma said, "Complicated," and he laughed once, short and pleased, like she'd answered the only way that mattered. At 5 o'clock, Vivian texted, "You survived. Now stop trying to win the day. Win the week. That means no stunts, right? The truth is that after you survive the grand choices, your life is a chain of small ones you have to keep making." We cooked dinner together, which is to say Emma salvaged what I oversalted, and I did not burn eggs. Hayes ate in the hall because he'd never been invited to a table by a protectee and didn't know where to put that kind of kindness. Emma opened the door and handed him a plate. He took it like a man receiving evidence he'd never thought he'd be allowed to see. "Thank you, Miss Collins," he said, and looked at his shoes like they needed checking. We did the dishes. We sat on the couch and didn't turn on the news. We allowed ourselves a half-hour of ignorance and called it strategy. At 8:09, the unknown number texted again. New tactic, not a threat. A photo. The lobby of our building, time-stamped 12 minutes earlier. Eleanor standing with the doorman, palm on the desk. Pearls catching the light like teeth. I sent it to Hayes. 2 minutes later, he sent back elevator camera stills of my mother stepping out on 12, where she did not live, and then stepping back in when she realized she had nothing new to discover except how well our locks fit. "Your mother is bored," Emma said. "She's plotting." I said. "She's not very good at waiting," Emma countered, "which is useful. We can be patient, and she can't." At 9:30, the building went quiet in the way only tall buildings do, vacs settling, pipes clearing their throats, a distant dog deciding the night wasn't worth patrolling, the kind of quiet you don't notice until your life is loud enough to earn it. Emma leaned her head on my shoulder. "We should talk about names," she said. "We don't know," I said. "We don't," she said. But my mum picked mine because she wanted something simple that would fit on job applications and name tags and diplomas. Nothing that made me explain myself before I spoke. "Then we pick something that doesn't perform," I said. She smiled into my shirt. "That's not the worst rule I've heard from a CEO." We tossed a few into the air and let them land without catching any. It felt like tempting fate to choose too early and arrogant to pretend we weren't already choosing. My phone buzzed again. Not the unknown number. "Vivian, park the romance for 72 hours. I just got you room to breathe." "Don't spend it," I typed back. "Breathing." Emma saw the screen and laughed, the dry, private kind. "Tell your board chair that breathing is the only thing I plan to overspend on." We went to bed. For 10 minutes, we were people who slept. At 11:22, Hayes's knock cracked the peace. 2 knuckles, twice. "We have a problem," he said through the door. By the time I opened it, he'd already put a tablet in my hand. A live feed from our garage. 2 men by the service elevator, badges that weren't ours. A bag too heavy for flowers. One pointed at the camera and smiled. "Police?" I asked. "Already called," Hayes said. "But they'll get here after the story does, if I wait." "We're moving you now." "Where?" Emma asked, voice even. "Up," Hayes said. "Super suite. It's interior. No common walls. We let them trip a camera and file the report. We do not let them get a frame of you in a hallway." We moved. Shoes, jackets, the bag that never really got unpacked once this started. The service stairwell smelled like dust and paint. In the super suite, the furniture was the kind you buy in bulk when you're furnishing spaces no one thinks they'll sleep in. Hayes killed the lights and left us with a flashlight and instruction. If the fire alarm goes, you ignore it. My guys will tell you when it's real. We lay side by side on a bed that didn't know our names and stared at a ceiling that didn't either. "You okay?" I asked. "I'm tired," she said. "Not of us. Of men who think they can make me do math with my body." I had 100 sentences. None fit. I settled on the only one that didn't try to solve her. "I'm here." "I know," she said. "After a while, you don't have to win every room to win me. You know that, right?" "I'm learning," I said. In the dark, the building exhaled. Hayes's radio whispered. Somewhere below us, someone discovered that our locks worked exactly the way locks are supposed to. A siren approached and receded, the way danger does when it's done failing to look like fate. At 12:31, a text from Vivian lit the dark. Anonymous complaint filed with the ethics hotline, alleging you used Reed Foundation funds to buy personal outcomes. I will handle. Do not reply. Do not rage. I typed and erased 4 versions of rage. Then I put the phone face down and looked at the woman beside me who had always handled herself. What if the complaint sticks? I asked the ceiling. Then we showed the paperwork. She said, "We did it right. And if someone decides right isn't the same as clean, we keep doing it right anyway. You make it sound simple. It isn't," she said. "But simple and easy aren't the same word." Eleanor invited us to a museum opening because she knows how to wrap obligation in culture. We went because we're raising a person who needs to learn both paintings and boundaries. In a gallery full of people pretending they wanted the art more than the guest list. My mother asked me if I'd decided. Not yet. I said, "Only children mistake deferral for wisdom," she said. "Only children think speed is proof," I said back. And then we looked at a Rothko until our reflection disappeared into pigment. Driving home, Emma rolled down the window on Van Ness and let in air that smelled like hot brakes and jasmine. "You didn't flinch," she said. "I've been practicing," I said. A week later, Vivian sent a single line, charter draft attached. "We do this with or without you. With is better." I read it at the kitchen island while Sam made a lake out of his water cup and Emma negotiated peace between a blueberry and a toddler who believed in the right to self-governed snacks. The charter wasn't a press release dressed as policy. It had teeth. It rewrote incentives in places that would matter when nobody watched. It reminded me of the boring kind of courage I decided to want more of. I emailed back a sentence that felt like a bridge I could stand on. "I'll take the seat if we adopt this charter first." Vivian replied, with a thumbs up emoji, which I've learned can be the most expensive symbol in business. That night, after Sam fell asleep with his arm round a stuffed dinosaur who has seen more meetings than most executives, I sat on the stoop with Emma and listened to a city conduct itself. We talked about schools and mortgages and whether we should get a dog, whose job would be to love all three of us without asking where we'd been. Our phones stayed face down. Somewhere in the building, someone argued about dishes in a language we don't speak and still understood. "Do you ever miss it?" Emma asked. "The room, the rush." "Sometimes," I said. "Then I remember the cost, and I miss us more." She tilted her head, measuring the truth of that. "You can go back in a different way," she said, "or not at all. The point is, you get to choose." "Daylight," I said. "Daylight," she said. Inside, the baby monitor flashed green. Sam rolled, sighed, resumed his conversation with sleep. Tomorrow he'll slam a cabinet and will pretend not to be proud of his conviction. I'll pack a lunch that looks like a deck reorganized into carrots and turkey. Emma will send a photo of a small person in a big hoodie, and I will put my phone down during a meeting, because some sentences shouldn't wait. The email from Vivian will arrive with a date for a vote. Eleanor will RSVP to our lives in ways that make sense to her. ReadTech will ship a build with a bug hidden in it that no one sees until a Tuesday, and someone I hired will fix it without telling me. The market will have a day. We will have Tuesday. I don't know yet whether I'll take the seat. I know this. If I do, the charter lands first. If I don't, I'll keep showing up for the kind of work that never trends and builds something anyway. Either way, Sam will learn that his father stood in a place he wasn't. Required to, and didn't move because it was easier. There's a future where my mother sits on a porch and teaches her grandson chess and forgets to tell him that every move costs a piece. There's a future where she doesn't. There's a future where I accept a vote that changes a company, and one where I start a clinic software nonprofit that no one knows how to value. There's a future where we buy a house with a fig tree and one, where we keep renting because the light is better here. We'll pick one by living it. For now, the air cools, the city dims, and the only thing that asks for certainty is a toddler who wants exactly the blue cup and no other. We give him the blue cup. We brush his teeth while he bargains for another minute of nothing urgent. We tuck him in. We stand in the hallway longer than we have to because the quiet belongs to us. Tomorrow, I'll open an email. Or I won't. I'll say yes. Or I'll say no. We'll take Sam to the park to watch cranes pretend to be dinosaurs. He'll point and shout. We'll laugh. The machine will hum. The market will price and unprice. A board will vote on something that matters to people I'll never meet, and we will walk home in daylight, carrying a person who doesn't perform and a future that isn't finished, practicing the ordinary until it feels like the bravest thing we ever chose.